Get a deeper connection with the Cougars of BYU sports.
God gives us a gift, and we use that gift until he takes it away.
Deep Blue.
Just sitting down afterward and being really tired and thinking like, wow, I just won the U.S. championship.
This is Deep Blue. Here's your host, Jason Shepard.
Thanks for tuning in for a new episode of Deep Blue. This is the show where we get to know the person behind the number that you see on the field or the court. These are the true stories of BYU athletes from their own mouths. And in this episode, it's part 2 of our sit-down chat with the Brazilian bomber, former BYU basketball player and current Cougar Hoops TV analyst Jonathan Tavernari. In part 1, we talk about how JT relates to other foreign players like Yegor Demon, how he first found out about BYU basketball, and how he converted to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints after playing at Timpview High School in Provo, Utah. Now on to part 2, beginning with Tavernari talking about why he left the state of Utah to play for high school basketball powerhouse Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas.
So, foreign exchange students can only be in the U.S. for 1 year when attending a public school. And that's in high school. Now, college is different, right? And so at that point, I fell in love with America. I wanted to stay here. The only way that I could stay here was by going to a private school, right? And I didn't really want to stay and go to Judge Memorial, just because like all of the arrangements being made by Judge. For me to stay, I would be staying with a Catholic family, and I really wanted to stay with a member family. I really wanted to grow my testimony. It really meant a lot to me that I got baptized. It really did. And so what I did at that point was I said, how can I do this? Because there's no private schools in Provo. My only people that I knew were in Provo, with the exception of a family that I met 2 years in a row at a BYU basketball camp, the year before I came and the year after. And they were the Westmorelands out of Las Vegas. And they had kids about my age, and we really clicked, and we were always joking around. And you know me, Jace, I'm very touchy and talkative and all of that. And they were the same. I felt like we were super close. And out of the blue, I reached out to them and I said, hey guys, I don't know if you remember me, but I have this situation. I got baptized. For me to stay in the U.S., I need to be able to stay and go to a private school. I know that there's a private school that you guys are close to in Las Vegas. Would I be able to come and stay with you guys? Could you help me? And on a moment's notice, the Westmoreland family, they opened the doors for me. They absolutely opened their doors and they opened their hearts. And if it wasn't for their kind and generosity and selfless sacrifice, I wouldn't be here today. And so they went and on my behalf, they did everything you possibly can imagine with Bishop Gorman and the people there to get me to go to attend there. Worked with the Provo School District to transfer my I-20 there. Worked with me to go to the consulate. We did everything by the book. And so after I played in AAU, I went back to Brazil again, and I got everything done that I needed to do in the consulate, and then went to Vegas. And in my senior year, to me, it changed me from being, a good, solid player that could get some offers to actually being a late bloomer. I was a McDonald's All-American nominee, and not everybody is, right? And so because of what Bishop Gorman meant to me, it's a basketball school, it's a basketball powerhouse, and they really challenged me. They challenged me physically, mentally, educationally, socially, and I'm a better person for it. And I felt like I was getting the best of both worlds. I was getting, I'm living with a member family. We go to church every Sunday. We have Sunday dinner. We say, morning prayers and nightly prayers. We do family home evening. And I'm getting to go to a powerhouse of a basketball school to develop my skills. I led Nevada in points and reboundings. It was a great year, and I was a late bloomer. And then at that point, I finally, I had offers from Pitt, from Virginia Tech, Virginia, Washington State, UCLA with Ben Howland, Florida. And so I had all these offers now, but I still really wanted to go to BYU. And I felt that pull because I decided not to serve a mission. And I decided not to serve a mission because I believe the gospel. I live the gospel. I have a really strong testimony of the gospel. But in my heart, I felt my mom and dad have made all of the sacrifice for me to get to college. I don't know how I'm going to pay for a mission. My mom and dad can't afford to pay for a mission. And so I personally made the decision not to go and serve a mission. But then in my heart, I truly felt like I was making the right decision by going to BYU because I could then represent the Lord and the Savior and the church by playing basketball. And so as I came to BYU and as I made that decision, I always felt like I'm not just representing myself. I'm not just representing my family. I am representing this university who is, connected to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who is, the Lord's church on earth. And so to me, I truly always, took upon myself that mantle to represent, the university and the church and the Savior by my actions on the court and off the court as I carry myself, bearing testimony and bearing witness of the gospel.
We've got more with Jonathan Tavernari coming up next on the Deep Blue Podcast. Hey, Cougar fans, this is Jason Shepard. I hope you're enjoying another season of great interviews here on Deep Blue. If you love Deep Blue, you should check out our other BYU radio podcasts like Her Why. Lauren McLean talks about everything BYU women's athletics with current athletes and coaches, plus stars from the past. BYU has some of the best women's teams in the NCAA, and you want to hear their unique perspectives. So download and subscribe to Her Why on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find podcasts. I'm Jason Shepard, and this is the Deep Blue Podcast from BYU Radio. Now back to my conversation with former BYU basketball player Jonathan Tavernari. So when you come to BYU, you are part of the program in the early years of Coach Rose as the head coach, but you look at the names that all BYU fans will remember from that time. You played on some of the best BYU teams. You, not just in terms of team victories, you also had a lot of individual accolades that came your way. When you look back at your time, what stands out to you? What do you remember most?
So I remember excellence, and I remember success. But all because of hard work and because of consistency. And that's the biggest lesson I got from BYU, which is you have to be consistent. For you to achieve excellence, it's not a given. But if you are consistent and you're doing things the right way on and off the court, and when you sacrifice for the betterment and the greater good of the team, good things happen. My freshman year, I ended up being the freshman of the year. I'm still the last BYU player to win freshman of the year. And when you look at the guys I played with Keenan Young. I played behind a player of the year. I played with Trent Plaisted, who was drafted in the NBA draft a couple of years later. I played with Lee Kamard, who became, one of the greatest players in BYU history, arguably the most underrated player in BYU history. I played with Austin Ainge. I played with Mike Rose. I played with Jimmy Balderson, right? I played with Sam Burgess and Ben Murdoch. I played with guys that were all about sacrificing for the team. And then my sophomore year, I get to play with Jackson Emery. I get to play with Chris Miles. I get to become best friends with Lamont Morgan and Mike Lloyd Jr. And all of these guys are putting aside individual success for our team to be good. And in my junior year, I'm more of a leader. I'm a team captain. And a lot of the responsibilities follow me. And me and Lee, our bond became really, really tight my junior year, his senior year, because it was us. We were the face of the team. We were the face of the program. And it just turned out to be that, when you get then adding Jackson, and we haven't even talked about Jimmer. I was at Jimmer's recruiting trip. I remember as if it was yesterday at Hilleman Halls, Jimmer being in there, being tucked in by his mom, and Kay coming to me and saying, "Hey, I know you're a convert and you used to be Catholic. Watch over my boy. I know you're going to do a great job." And every single time I see Kay gives me a hug, and we always talk about that. And so, and then we go into my senior year where Jimmer has come into his own. Between Jimmer and I, we had over 50 points at Arizona. He had 49 and I had 2. So we combined for 50.
Yeah.
And so, here's Jimmer coming to his own. And we have one of the most prized recruits come to BYU, Tyler Haas, who ended up being the all-time leading scorer at BYU. And I'm in a position of leadership. I'm a preseason player of the year by some publications. I'm a preseason All-American honorable mention for some publications. People at the end of my junior year, they were even talking about me being able to be a late second-round pick because of how I played my junior year and playing with the Brazilian national team. And then because I had the experience of playing with Jimmy Balderson, Mike Rose, Sam Burgess, Jackson Emery, and all of these unselfish guys, I truly felt my senior year that if Noah Hartsock started instead of me and I come off the bench, the team is going to be better for it. The rotations, how do you bring off the bench the all-time leading scoring 3-point maids in BYU history? How do you bring the freshman of the year, a preseason player of the year off the bench? But, those are the things that I learned from BYU, that if you give up something good for something great, you will be able to get something in return. And, I graduated with 3 championships, a box out away from having 4 championships, and me not being in YouTube on a clip with Steve Alford, with him not saying some nice things about me. I went to 4 straight NCAA tournaments. Every single year, my team was ranked in the top 25. And the first time in school history, we had 30 wins. And all of that happened because, yes, I was pretty good, but because a lot of people bought into what we do. And because of that, I remember my biggest lesson from BYU is excellence because of your commitment, to work hard and be really good.
Okay, you touched on it, and I actually wanted to ask you, and so I'm glad that you did bring it up. For those that haven't heard the Steve Alford story, tell that story, because this is this is such a great story.
So you will remember, because at that point in time, it was the highest rated ranking game in Mountain West Conference history. We were number 9, number 10. New Mexico was number 9, number 10. It was, a top 10 matchup for a championship at the Marriott Center. It's a great back and forth game. It's senior night. It's my senior night. And, it's an emotional night, as you know. And you've been around for so many, senior night is tough. Plus, you're playing for a championship. Plus, there's 23,000 people going berserk. And so we lose the game. It come down to the last seconds. During the game, we had some heated things. But at the very end of the game, I'm looking up, hoping for a replay or something, but the game is over. And their whole team comes down the line shaking our hands. And I'm just in unbelief that I lost at the Marriott Center. In 4 years at the Marriott Center, I never lost a game my freshman year. I never lost a game my sophomore year. I lost once or twice my junior year. And one of them was to Wake Forest, and the other was to UNLV. And then I lost my senior year at home to New Mexico. So that's 3 home losses in 4 years. And so I'm in disbelief, and Steve Alford is coming, and and as soon as I'm looking down, I look down, he's right in front of me. And my very first reaction was like, get lost, get out of here. you no good doer. Definitely not in those words. And so as
it's
I
the clean version,
that,
and we appreciate it.
yeah, it's the clean flicks version. And so as soon as he said that, he and I started just jawing back and forth. And I'm like, you don't know who I am. Like, you better ask somebody. And, I'm going to see you in Vegas and blah, 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 blah. And he and I started going. He's like, what are you going to do about it? Huh? What are you going to do about it? I said, well, you better watch it then. Okay, then. All right. And so, and then he said, no, I came here to tell you how great, and you can hear him saying, I came to tell you how great of a player you are, how good of a job you've done. He always came to me and always complimented me and said, you're one of my favorite players in this conference. I love the way you played. And as soon as we went to the locker room, as soon as Dave Rose started, talk to us, I left the locker room running, and Tom Homer was right outside. And I grabbed him, and Tom and I are very, 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 very close. Very close. And I said, Tommy, I need you to take me to their locker room now. And he goes, JT, I said, Tom, I need you to come with me to their locker room right now. And Tom walked me there. Tom knocked on the door and said, hey, can you get Steve Alford? And then he gets Steve Alford, and I said, I am so sorry. I was on the wrong. Please forgive me. It was a lapse in my judgment. Please accept my apologies. Congratulations. We hugged it out, and I left. And so, but what did the cameras all capture? Right. They captured him yelling at me, him talking to an opposing player. At that point, he's talking to a kid because college players weren't getting paid. And, I was 21 years old, but apparently I wasn't a grown man. And so, like, they're talking to all of these things, and he comes and gets reprimanded by the Mountain West, and I've actually, the first year I was back from Italy, just before COVID hit, I actually went to UNR, University of Nevada, Reno's practice at the Marriott Center to see him and to talk to him and to see him and Roman Gonzalez, who played for him in New Mexico. And we hugged it out. We got together. Roman and I went to dinner afterwards. And, but that's what happened. And, and again, like, the clip lives infamously on YouTube with more views than I actually am happy, that he has.
So you had mentioned that, you're starting to hear some buzz that maybe there's a chance, because you talked about, you wanted to play in the NBA. You grew up watching that and idolizing that type of, that league and that type of basketball and those types of players and personalities. So you said that there was a chance, or that you're starting to hear that maybe there was a chance that was possible for you. Turns out it wasn't something that was in the cards for you. Ultimately, you decided to go play overseas. Take me through that transition and the impact that it had on you, not just from a basketball standpoint, but your family and ultimately, your future.
It actually all started at the summer before my senior year. I just got done on my junior year. I had a really good year. I averaged 16 and 8. And, I was making a ton of 3-pointers. I played very much like George's Niang kind of plays now, but I'm about, 8 years earlier than he is. And so the game wasn't where it was. And so, but because I did well that season and I played really well with the national team the year before my junior year and the year after, I have an Italian passport. I have offers to go to Europe. I'm getting offered 7-figure job offers in Europe to go to Spain, to go to Italy. And I had just gotten engaged. I know I think you remember me going on the court, after a game and proposing to my wife. Mm-hmm. And so, but it's a crazy time in my life. And I remember my mom saying, the biggest inheritance and the largest inheritance I can leave you is with the ability for you to provide for yourself. It's an education. It's a way for you to take care of yourself and your family. You should not go pro right now. You need to go back to school. And I talked to Coach Rose, and it was a really difficult decision for me. I will say this. It was the second most difficult decision in my life. First one was not serving a mission. Second one was coming back to BYU. And because I have a ticket, like this is in the middle of the recession, 2008, 2009. I have a ticket for over $1 million, but I don't take it. And I mean, my contract was big, Shep. It was like a 3-year, like almost a $2 million offer that I had on the table. And,
really?
And it was a very large offer. It was, and I had another one for 1.5. I had big offers because I had played at such a high level. And, but, you know, I decided to come back and, you know, I get married and I go into my senior year. My senior year is not as expressive as it was. But I'm still pretty good. I'm still the only non-professional player. I'm the youngest guy on the Brazilian national team playing at Olympic qualifiers, World Cup qualifiers, World Cups, and all of this stuff. And so I'm still a somebody, and I know I'm going to play professionally. And so I have a chance, you know, you mentioned about the NBA. So I had a chance to go to Treviso, Italy for the old Euro camp. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
And so I go there. Larry Bird actually kind of grows keen of me. He said, "Hey, I like your game. You're undersized, but you shoot. You play you can't play the one, but you can play the guard spot, a forward spot. Let's get you to Indiana to see what that's all about." So I spend a lot of that summer, you know, before I go with the national team, after the season, I spend a lot of time in Indiana, and I'm doing things with the Pacers. I'm over there. But ultimately, you know, they want me to go to the G League. And at that point, you know, you're making $30,000 a year in the G League, where in Europe, you could make that in a month, you know. And so I'm like, it becomes an easy, an easy choice for me. And mainly because I grew up with people going to Europe. Most of my guys on my national team, aside from Leandro Barbosa, Varejao, Nene, even Splitter wasn't in the NBA at that time. So for me, Europe was just the next step. So we go there, and you know, I had an okay pro career. I had a much better college career than I had a pro career, and but what stands out for me the most about my wife's and mine time in Europe is the service that we were able to do. And the hand of the Lord that we saw. And it has very little to do with basketball, and that's true. We were in places where we had to really figure out ways to help members that would take 3-hour trains to get to the branch for Sunday service. We had to figure out ways to work with the missionaries, and then towards the end of my career, you know, people knew who I was in Italy. I had a name, not that I was famous, like I could walk down the street and people asked for my autograph, but people knew who I was because I had played and I was a good shooter, to the point that we were doing service projects with the Italian government. I'm very much, you know, intertwined in working with the church in Europe, working with the Area 70s, the leadership in Italy, being involved in the Rome Temple, and you know, participating in certain special translations for members, so they're a part of the temple. Attending the temple open, the openings of the temple, and having the open house, and getting to hang out with President Nelson, Elder Uchtdorf, Elder Eyring, Elder Holland. Having personal conversations with Elder Christofferson. And so my time in Italy, you know, as I look back, I was a successful player. I led the Champions League in three-point percentage. I was a very good player. But to me, what stands out from my entire professional career was the ability that I had of being in the spotlight, of being in the limelight, and always preach the gospel. You know, being in a locker room and I'm getting dressed and they're like, oh, why do you got that? It's 100 degrees outside. Why do you have 2 shirts? And I'm like, well, this is my tempo shirt. Oh, let's go out to dinner. Fantastic. We are at a Michelin 3-star rated restaurant on the Amalfi Coast, and everybody's having 50-year-old wine and I'm having a Diet Coke. You know, certainly that's going to spark a conversation, which I was grateful that he did. And so I was able to, preach the gospel and share my testimony in multiple ways. And that's where I feel like the Lord blessed me. And I know people can disagree with this, but I'm at peace with this. I truly felt that the Lord guided me to not serve a mission and to have such an impact in my testimony. Like when I watch the best 2 years, I cry because I'm like, I wish I had that feeling. And I've always tried to chase that feeling by sharing my testimony so much, by preaching, by doing missionary work. And so my professional career was solid, but what I remembered the most was, being, the relationships that I created, from the gospel at church. Those are the most meaningful to me.
All right, last question. We've talked a lot about your conversion and how much the gospel means to you in your life. We obviously know how much your family, both your parents, but also the family that you have created with your wife means to you. We know how much your playing career means to you, whether it be at BYU or overseas. I want to ask you lastly about becoming a United States citizen. You said at the beginning of the podcast that you always felt very Americanized. This is always where you wanted to be. So for you to be able to be a citizen of the United States of America, what did that mean to you?
Yeah. So, what's interesting is when I actually submitted all the paperwork and I became American, the number one thing I was doing that for is because I wanted to vote. And I thought it was, I kind of got tired of living in America and paying taxes and not be able to decide who gets to do what of my taxes. And so that was my number one thing. Now, the interesting thing was, I got my process done and everything. And once I actually became a citizen, so many people congratulated me. That's a big deal. Oh my gosh. Like I had 3 surprise parties thrown to me at work, by friends and by family. And to me, like at that moment, I'm like I get it. Like I'm an American citizen. I've had a green card for 10 years. I just needed to be physically in America for 30 months before I could submit the paperwork. And I'm finally 30 months after my career. Now I can do this. But the more I've pondered about what it means to naturalize and become a citizen, what America stands for, what the founding fathers fought for, what it means, the Constitution, to be a free country, to have freedom of speech, to live in a place where vertically you can improve your life if you work hard and if you have a little bit of luck and you get the help of people, and then it's your turn to help others. And so to me, all of those things embody the American dream. And I remember, like I said, growing up, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is one of the main ways I learned how to speak English. And I always thought, hey, I get to be Will. I get to be the Fresh Prince of Provo. I'm the cool new kid. I'm coming from somewhere else, but now I'm older. And, there are a few, my son, my older son, Xander, he's really good at basketball, really, really good at basketball. He himself already has academies in Europe asking if he wants to join them. And because he also has an Italian passport. And so, and because of basketball, through my son, I now take care of a few different kids. I got twin boys from South Sudan that they are literally as much as my children and my godchildren. They call me Godfather. But now it's interesting that I went from being Will, and now I'm almost like I'm Uncle Phil. And to me, I see that transition. And because to me, that's the American dream. At the very end of Cinderella Man, Russell Crowe says, this is a great country. This country does a lot for you. And he helped with the construction of the Brooklyn Bridge. And he did all these things. And Krasimir Chosic, one of the last times he spoke before he passed, he said, life is so much more fulfilling and rewarding when you help others achieve their dream after you've been able to accomplish some things yourself. And so to me, that's the embodiment of being an American citizen, of the American dream. You know, the world is our campus. Enter to learn and go forth to serve. I took that to heart, and I try to live that with my wife, who's also a BYU Cougar. You know, I try to live that every single day of my life with our family.
Well, JT, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you being willing to do this. You know, you being willing to share your story is fantastic. You being willing to share your testimony to the level that you have is pretty remarkable. So thank you so much for being willing to do this. I enjoyed this. I hope you did too.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Again, I know we're doing this for everybody else because you and I have known each other for so long, right?
Long time.
You've known this forever, but I appreciate you. I appreciate the vehicle of information that BYUtv is, you know, that allows so much goodness to be sent out in the world, and I'm lucky to be a part of it.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks once again to my guest, Jonathan Tavernari. My name is Jason Shepard. Ben Hall produced this episode. Deep Blue senior producer is Cleon Wall. You can download and subscribe to Deep Blue on all podcast platforms or find all episodes on the BYU Radio app. Deep Blue is a production of BYU Radio.